So the trick to painting hair is to change the way you think about hair, which is what I'm going to explain in this video. And I want to show you how what I'm going to teach you in this video applies to any length of hair. So I'm going to demonstrate by painting the many different hairstyles of Brad Pitt. So what do I mean when I say change the way you think about hair? I mean, don't be thinking about hair as hair. You know, don't be thinking of it as a bunch of little individual hairs. Try and get that out of your mind. The more you can get that out of your mind, the better. Instead, try and think of it as big, solid masses. The best visual I can give you for this is whenever you see a statue that has hair, since the sculptor wasn't gonna carve out individual little hairs, it's carved in chunks and it's just all one solid mass. That's how you should be thinking about hair and how you should think about painting it. The number one problem I see with students' portraits in terms of the hair is that it just lacks any kind of structure. They get to the hair and they're just like, I'm just gonna, put a bunch of colors or get a really little brush and just put a bunch of little hairs. And that's not really what makes hair look like hair. Now, another thing I kind of want you to rethink is how much detail you actually need to put in the hair. I see a lot of people get kind of carried away with the amount of detail they put in the hair, especially if it's someone with really cool hair, a lot of highlights and everything. Like you want to get all that in. But remember, if you're doing a portrait, most of the time, you want the main focus of attention to be the face. And you wouldn't want, very detailed, bold hair kind of taken away from that. And the cool thing is that if you get this structure down and understand it, you will need very little detail in the hair to pull it off. Whenever I think about hair painted really well, very simply, I always think of this painting by John Singer Sargent and just like, how from afar, like the hair works absolutely perfectly. But if I zoom in, you can see how simply it's done. We just have a dark shape there, a brush stroke there, a few brush strokes for highlights, really good soft edges. Like look how soft this edge is right here. I mean, this right here is so nice how it's like lost into the darkness, yet it still has that form, this kind of cylinder-like form. Things like this is so good. I mean, look at that, come on. All right, now let's move on to these Brad Pitt examples. So this is the photo for the first one. It's Brad Pitt and Troy. And when I go into this painting, the main thing I'm thinking about are kind of the form of the big chunks. Like you kind of got a big chunk right there. You got one right here. And you can tell like it has this cylinder form just from like where the highlight is. We got another big chunk right here. And also paying attention to the light and the light sources. So for example, with this big chunk, there's this ambient, kind of cooler light coming from behind and spilling onto like the back of that chunk. Whereas the front is getting hit by a warmer light that's spilling over through that side. You can see it right there as well. And then the cooler light coming back right there. Now, when it comes to like strands, like little locks like this, the main thing you should pay attention to is how it's not the same value all the way down. This area right here is lighter and then it gets darker and darker as it goes up. And paying attention to where the light part is like in the bend of the hair is really important because it gets darker and then it comes and it gets lighter and then it gets darker again, then lighter again. And it's a lot of times I see people will just paint it all one value and it really won't have that effect of, being curved. Same thing with something like this. It definitely has a cylinder-like form to it with the lightest part in the middle. So those are the things I'm going to be paying attention to while going into this painting. So normally when I'm painting a portrait, I just kind of paint the hair as I go. I don't like to set aside one particular time during the portrait to just paint the hair to completion. But I thought it'd be helpful for this video to do that. So I actually did it just on this portrait. The other Brad Pitt paintings, I paint as I go. But I just want to let you know, like I don't wait till the end to just paint the hair. But the first thing I do here is I get the overall shape of the hair. You can see I got some of that cooler ambient light spilling from the back of the head. I also try and work dark to light as much as possible because if you think about it, the darkest parts of the hair are gonna be the parts that are deepest in the hair. So if you get those down first, you can try and work your way out with lighter colors. I say I try and do this because most of the time I'm just gonna be bouncing back and forth from light to dark. Now, a very helpful tip is to get the background in very early because it's gonna help you do a lot of different things. One, it can help you cut back into the hair to reshape it if it's looking off or not drawn right. But also it can help you create soft edges on the hair, which is very important when it comes to hair. Soft edges is a thing that you're gonna use after identifying that form and that structure to make it read as hair and not like a statue of just, a blocky mass. Also, speaking of soft edges, when I do start putting in lighter, smaller shapes in the hair, I'm giving them soft edges by taking advantage of working wet into wet paint and letting it blend a little bit on the canvas. All right, quick diversion for a second. If you're watching this video, you're probably into portrait painting. And if you're into portrait painting, you might be struggling when it comes to mixing skin tones. I'm not gonna talk about it in this video, but I do offer the skin tones demonstration from my Basics of Portrait Painting course for free. I show the colors that I like to have on my palette for portraits and how I mix up skin tones. So if you wanna check that out, a link to get that is in the description of this video. All right, back to Brad Pitt's hair. So looking at the final painting here, you can see I got that cool light kind of coming in from behind, warmer light in the front. You know, identified like this big shape and form there. Got another one there. Again, this cylinder form there. A lot of soft edges in here. A lot of just these lighter locks of hair kind of coming out from the darkness. You know, soft edge there. Also, another thing is pay attention to values. I feel like a lot of people go too light with the highlights in hair. You can see how close in value all the shapes are in the hair. You know, I got a few lighter values here, but even so, you know, this is pure white and it's still a lot darker than that. Always keep your values in mind with hair. All right, now let's try a different length of hair. Here we got Brad Pitt from Fight Club. It's a lot shorter, and I know when I was first starting out portrait painting, like this would terrify me of having to deal with all of that. And the way that you're gonna deal with that is by really utilizing the background and coming into the background and then bouncing back and coming back with the hair, using soft edges and really playing with that. I'll show you that later in the demonstration. Another thing to be paying attention to is like whenever you got areas like this light shape here, you know, pay very close attention to the shape, the direction that it's going, because that light shape is there for a reason, because the head is a sphere. And it's good to think about the light as it's hitting a sphere. So this one area is going to be lighter, and then it's going to get darker as it goes down here, and then darker as it gets up there. Just like if you ever drawn or painted, you know, a sphere. But it's really just gonna be about identifying shapes. I mean, and not overcomplicating it. You know, we got a lot of just dark right there. I'm not gonna be afraid to mask that in, just all dark. Same there. And again, it's mainly gonna come down to finessing and doing all this spikiness up here. So with this one, I get the background in very early because I know I'm going to need it to paint this hair on top into that wet paint of the background. Now, another helpful tip in terms of the background and getting it in early is that a lot of times you're going to find the background color in a portrait reflected in the hair. And you can see I did here in these lighter parts in the hair. Now when doing these spikes, it really is a dance of bouncing back and forth from bringing the hair into the background and then coming back with the background into the hair, knowing where to have a soft edge, when to come in like with the background and put like a little hole in the hair to have like a crisp edge. You really have to feel it out. And the main thing is to make sure that like as you're making these shapes, that you're not making them the same size, that they have a sense of randomness to it. You know, as humans, we naturally want things to be even and symmetrical, but when it comes to painting, that makes things look artificial and not natural. So keep an eye out for that. But I was working and playing with this hair all the way to the end of the painting. So with the final painting here, you can see, you know, a lot of soft edges with the hair up here, you know, working that background into the hair. Not afraid of losing the hairline also, you can see right here. It just gets lost right into that shadow. I'm just thinking of this as like one big dark shape. You know, hairlines is another area you're gonna want to have soft edges. You know, for example, like right here, it's not a crisp, harsh edge on the hairline. A lot of times I'll work in the color in the skin into the hair, like I'll brush it in. And when it comes to things like sideburns, don't overthink it. You know, it's just a change in color and value. You know, I communicated it right here just by making it a little bit darker. You know, I have this highlight on the side of the head here, and then you see it lines up right with the highlight on the skin because it's all on the spherical shape of the head and it's catching the light in that certain way. All right, and on to the last example. You know, this is really short hair close to the head, and when I first started out painting portraits, this type of hair was terrifying to me to paint because I'd always paint it and it ended up just looking like the person was wearing a helmet. But the key thing here is still understanding the shape. You know, the hair is not flat on the head, and you can see little areas like here, this dark area. It's going to help show that the hair is raised off the head a little bit. And also it's gonna come down to having good soft edges on the hairlines. If you don't have that, that's how it ends up looking like a helmet. Also paying attention to areas that are lighter, you know, starting to get a little darker. Just got a big dark mask there, little highlight over there. The key is to not overthink it. A lot of times the simplest way is the best way. And when I start painting, I'm very loose with everything. The last thing I want to do is be very crisp with this hair. That's how you're gonna make it look like helmet hair. I'm blocking out just the light and the dark, figuring out the overall form. I find more specific, smaller shapes as I go. I get that bright highlight in early to help me use as a key or reference point for the other values in the hair. And there's really not much to this one. It's really just, getting the right shape. When the hair's close to the head like this, it's also with, if you paint anybody that's bald, like you have to really pay attention and get the right drawing, the right shape of the head, or it's gonna not look right. But getting a few light and dark shapes in the right place to communicate the form, having the soft edges so it reads as hair, and just understanding less is more. All right, so main thing, no harsh edges. You can see the edges all along the hairline here are soft. I worked the color of the skin into the hair as I was painting that wet into wet paint to give that soft edge. Also not afraid of just having big dark masses, like all of that, just one big dark shape. So nose gets darker down on the side of the head, like around the sideburns. Lighter shapes, lightest highlight there, still got that dark shape to give form to the hair so it's not just flat on the head. Also very important to get the right drawing for the outside edge of the hair. You can't really get away with as much as you can like other longer hairstyles, because if you get this wrong, it's going to make like the shape of the head look funny. So paying attention to that is also very important. Now, if you go and paint a portrait of someone with hair and you use any of these tips, please feel free to tag me on Instagram at Forza43 or use the hashtag PaintCoach. I would love to see them. That's it for this video. I'm Chris Fornatero here telling you to go get painting.